We continue with the conversation. Before we took a short break, we were still turning our focus on the traveling of legislators to Moscow, and they've been doing this. Also, Rio was one of the other, of course, tournament or the Olympics games that they attended as well. But even that report, we've not seen it right now. But we're being asked to do some due diligence as media as well to make sure that we have that report and ask pertinent questions on why it is not really tabled in Parliament as well. But before we took a short break, we promised to circle back with you, Dr. Zani.
Thank you. Well, I just wanted to talk about the way public participation is coming up, and this is one of the ways. You know, public participation is one of the main articles in the Constitution, and that when Kenyans respond and react, yes, and as they ought to, and in more than one ways. You know, this is one way that also the now developed countries transited through these specific parts, so that people have the voice, and it's good that the media is given that voice. People have the voice, they can ask the questions, and therefore it is due diligence both ways, that questions can be asked and they can actually be answered. The presentation of the facts can be put and questions can be asked, and this would help. I just wanted to mention that even in devolution, in the counties, for example, which have already started looking at the CIDPs and discussing with the participants and coming up with proper participation mechanisms. The public participation bill is in Senate right now as we speak, as one of the legislative agendas to ensure that actually participation happens. It finally becomes a good thing. So this is something that needs to be discussed so that people can understand even more. For example, even after that legislative proposal has come, it's not the MPs who will implement it directly, but MPs need to oversight to ensure that if it is stadiums, it is in the county government. They have to ensure, call the governor to note and ask, is this stadium put in place? And citizenry can hold their leadership to account by saying, you know, have you checked on this particular stadium? Have you checked on this particular initiatives? And from the reports, that general legislative proposal and others, because when that report is discussed on the floor of the House, other people might come up with different ideas and actually help and enhance. I think we need to reach a point where we're all reading from the same page and seeing the roles of each other vis-a-vis the situations as they arise. That's what I wanted to say.
All right. Okay, we just also need to read some of the reactions that we have here on social media. We have Okaka Felix saying, surely, why do they need to benchmark obvious things? You build from the grassroots going up, football academies, I should say, better stadia, increase sponsorship, professionalizing the sport. Good governance is what Okaka Felix is saying. Also, we have WC Fever saying all those Waheshimiwas are beneficiaries of the so-called benchmarking trips. You cannot expect them to criticize the unnecessary Russian trip. That is what also WC Fever is saying. Also, we have John Gidanga saying the trip to Russia by 20 MPs was just an escapade, a waste of taxpayers' money. The report they are coming to present will be cooked dossier that will not help improve the standard of football in the country. Also, Dr. Jen Omwenga, she's saying, let's borrow from what happened with Lucy Gichuhi, the Australian senator. Of course, we know her demise after it was revealed that she was using the public offers to, you know, make sure that some of our relatives traveled to Australia. And we saw what happened with her seat as well in Australia. We can never cease to learn from this as well. Also, we have Katumu Kocheli. Apart from Johnson Sakaja, I've never seen a member of parliament attending local football matches. What are they benchmarking in Russia, yet they cannot implement it back at home, right? We've not seen most of you attending Gor Mahia and AFC tournaments here in the country, yet you do want to actually travel abroad and you see what is happening with Russia football.
So I think, Dibal, I think it must be said, and credit should be given to Honorable Asotsi Godfrey, who then moved a motion in Parliament a few weeks ago where he wants to have sports academies established in every constituency. I think, so at least there are some parliamentarians who really take the whole sports thing to heart and want Kenyans to benefit.
A sports academy?
Yes, I think that was on the end of 27th of June.
All right. Honorable Pogisho, which is the last tournament you attended here in the country as far as Gor Mahia FC is concerned, before you went to the Commonwealth Olympics?
You could ask me about the other sports as well that I attended, including
aside from golf.
But and encouraging our young people who are especially athletics. That's what I follow very much myself. Yes. But I agree with you. The whole reason why we should be participating. Dibal, we have said here that the population, the Wananchi, holding us responsible, holding us accountable. It's a good thing. As has been said, my colleague, it's public participation. It's a good thing. So those, some of the challenges you're giving us now are those ones, and we should take note of them. However, I mean, we should just start dealing with the sporting, the whole sporting thing, and how we change the way we've done sports before, because it's not taking us anywhere. So I agree. I mean, we don't attend all this except maybe when there are finals and things like that. But we should be active as well in visiting, in participating and training with them, or giving them pointers. So we should agree. I mean, I agree with you. The local, we have left our local teams totally unattended. And but I must tell you, there are some of us even in the Senate who are active, who are always in the. We are playing football even almost on a weekly basis. So it's good. We also have a team that we train with. But that's not the issue. The issue is I agree with the parliament being held responsible by the people who voted for them. That I agree with you. And so we'll take pointers, but we can also learn from those who have gone out on these trips.
Okay. All right, let's just continue also with the conversation, and I want just to draw your attention to what we also need to discuss this morning. Just allow me to try and put it up briefly so that we can see what we want to train our focus on. This is on page 9 of today's Star, and it says, Sholay criticized the over bill to scrap women rep seat. Counterparts say her proposal is misplaced and will undermine the position of women in society. Several women representatives have faulted their Uasin Gishu counterpart Gladys Sholay for proposing the scrapping of a seat in her constitutional amendment bill tabled in Parliament. Sholay seeks to scrap the women representative position and increase the number of women in Parliament through election instead of party nominations. The bill proposes the pairing of constituencies to form one constituency that will be reserved solely for women. Both genders will vie for seats in the exiting constituencies. Sholay, you want to defend yourself?
Oh, yes.
Yes, on this particular development, yes?
Yes, thank you, Dibal. It's a great opportunity. Okay, first of all, I think I accept criticism all the time throughout my life. And I always believe that, I think someone always said that if you stand for something, there will be those against you and there will be those for you. And if you stand for nothing, there will be no one against you and there will be no one for you. So for me, I take it at its stride. But I believe also that in due time, I will be able. Remember, the bill hasn't even come for the first reading yet, so ordinarily we shouldn't be, I mean, there shouldn't be too much debate. But I take the opportunity that I have had the opportunity, that attention has been brought to it, that I may have the chance to start lobbying it. And I know that when I lobby, every woman member of Parliament will eventually support me. And let's put it like this. First of all, it's not scrapping the woman representative seat. For example, Uasin Gishu, instead of having one seat reserved for women, it will have 3. So it's not scrapping the seat, it's increasing the number of seats reserved for women. And also, it's not, and so it's, yes, it's scrapping the seat in the traditional way we know it, but it's creating more seats for women. Because think about it, a woman running on a whole county level does not prepare them to be able to even get into leadership in the future. Because first, it's too much ground to cover, too little resources is put to it, but with a smaller geographical area and more women put out there. And if I was a selfish person, I'd probably be saying it's better to just have 1 seat. But I'm saying Uasin Gishu will need 3. Nairobi, which has 17 constituencies, will probably end up with 9 seats reserved for women. That is, there will be women, there are women representatives in any case. But also, Dibal, the issue of the 2/3 requirement is a constitutional requirement. And remember that Article 3 enjoins every person has an obligation to defend the Constitution, to respect and defend the Constitution. As a member of Parliament, I swore to defend and uphold the Constitution. The fact that, and also as a lawyer, This is what I do. And this time, I'm speaking about the fact that we do not have the requirement of the two-thirds principle has not been adhered to in Parliament. So I'm speaking up for it. And today, it is about the women positions. Next time, it might be about people with disabilities. But next time, it might, and just let me, because I need to set the pace on this one. Next time, it might be people with minorities, minorities or youth. I will speak up for it. So I am speaking for the Constitution. And let's, and remember, there is already a bill that is government-sponsored that is currently in Parliament, what is commonly known as the Duale Bill. I did transmit my bill in November to the Speaker. But of course, because the Leader of Majority gets priority, he is 3 months ahead of me on this. And in his proposal, so in his proposal, I support his proposal. If it can work, well and good. And I will appreciate it, and I'll throw my weight behind it. But his bill, the only place where we differ is that he proposes that the two-thirds principle be achieved over a period of 20 years. Okay? This is a civil and political right. It's in the Bill of Rights. You cannot say that it is achieved progressively. Our Constitution requires that we have governors, deputy governors, senators, and so on. Did we say we'll achieve it over 20 years? No, it is immediate. This is a right that must be achieved immediately. It is not progressive. It is not a socio-economic right. And therefore, that is the only place where we differ with the Duale Bill. But because it's ahead of my bill, and it's already gone through public participation, it's about to come for the second reading, when the time comes. If that bill succeeds, then my bill will be obsolete. You understand? Mm-hmm. So also I want to remove this notion that it's either the Duale Bill or the Cholet Bill. No. This is another alternative. Secondly, where my bill is different from the Duale Bill, because both bills have one objective, to increase the number of women in Parliament so as to meet the two-thirds principle, which is a constitutional requirement. My bill requires, I'm proposing that we have those women, those positions filled, not through nomination after an election, but through election from the onset. I believe that is what affirmative action is all about. It allows women to showcase themselves, for the society to see what they are capable of. They are tested through campaigns, and therefore chances of women getting elected without an affirmative action process will then become easier going forward. And so what I will have an opportunity. I know the time will come. We shall engage across the country. We shall engage with women both in and outside Parliament. And I know that when they do understand and read my bill, they will find that it is actually a big advantage, and the biggest winners will be women, especially the women representatives who have dared to go through a very rigorous campaign to get elected. They will support that more than supporting a process where women will be increased in Parliament through nomination.
All right. Okay, let's say from Dr. Zani, do you think this is a providential time to have this particular bill, being fronted by Gladys Boss-Cholet?
Thank you, Diba. I'll come to the context of that. I just wanted to add one thing, which I think is important, because I think the nexus of this bill hinges on the process that is used for the women to come on board. And just to say that instead of political parties therefore coming up with a list, that then there's an elective process. This was identified even as we moved towards the no more than two-thirds bill in the 11th Parliament. That provision had been put there, and a proposal had been made that if that bill goes through, that, and at that time it was still the Duale Bill, that if it goes through, then we must have amendment to the Political Parties Act. And there was a proposal that was made then for the second best winner, or the best loser, so we called it, so that the women also have gone through a process, but this is a process at the party level, at the party primaries, so that they have actually also participated, and then therefore political parties would have to come up with some sort of formula, because it won't be everybody again who can make it into taking a position, maybe some sort of quotas, or some sort of coming up with the percentages of, how many people chose you against how much such, so that you actually find a process to be able to do that. But contextualizing, I just want to say, first of all, Honorable Shelley is in order to bring a bill, as any member is meant to bring a bill at a time they feel that it adds on to the value of a discussion that is going on. I think the only problem is that this bill came up in the 11th Parliament, and we went through more or less the same process. Many bills were brought by various organizations. There was the Soipan bill, for example, that came. There was the Green Movement bill that came, and there were so many proposals that were put together. And then the Gender Commission formed a technical committee to try to make one bill that would actually be acceptable across board. And therefore, we came up now with what came to be known later on as the Ndwale Bill, which actually just moved the provisions of Article 177, which gives the provision for the counties, because this problem does not exist in the county assemblies. In the county assemblies, the provision to attain the no more than 2/3 of any gender is already in place. It's only missing at the National Assembly and in the Senate. And the provisions are different, because in the Senate, we need 2 more senators for us to be able to get to the no more than 2/3, which will be equal to the third. In the National Assembly, the percentage is about 20% at the moment, so more members required for them to reach the 2/3. So the process is all right. As Honorable Shelley also says, that one bill might supersede another. You know, if the Ndwale Bill, for example, is processed and everybody goes in that direction, then it'll die off. But I also think that this bill has not come for the first reading. And I know we had a caucus of the women legislators, I think about a week ago, and other caucuses will come. Because I think what we need to be able to do is finally reach a particular goal. We must have a specific end result. And we must make sure that we actually get to the specific end result. Now, from what I'm saying, the sense of disconnect is coming in terms of how these women will come on board. And therefore, such ideas can be shared. For example, if we have a change to the Political Party Act and make it a more rigorous process, because even then, when we were proceeding with the bill in the 11th Parliament, most of the members of Parliament said, no, we want also, and it helps also for the women to feel that they were part of the process, they actually have gained, they've actually have struggled, they've actually gone for these elective positions. So one way would be to actually impinge and put it within the Political Parties Act, so that at the end of the day, they actually have gone through the process. So again, it's a question of, you know, comparing and say, does this route get us there? For example, if proposals are made that we amend this, does this satisfy the other condition, or do we want it changed prompto? Now, the other thing also is we have to be careful with the constitutional amendment, because again, it will be on votes. And this is what, again, was discussed when we were discussing the various memberships, that, for example, you might have a constitutional amendment to remove certain positions. And we need to make sure that when the amendment to return them actually comes on board, it can actually happen. So I think it's finally all players are reading from the same page. And I was a part of this process. Even the Soipan bill, the Green Movement bill, had very, very good proposals, and each was finally to get us to a particular spot. Now, bills and the way we think about them is not something that is done overnight. I think this has just begun. And I think more people need to understand what the Honorable Shelley bill is all about, because I think it just happened in the papers and everybody is reacting. People just need to understand. Caucuses need to be made and kept. People need to understand what is going on, and then the Ndwale will come, and then I don't know whether that will mean another constitution or whether there'll be a blend or some amendment somewhere. But again, it's a constitutional bill, so it can't be amended on the floor of the House.
But the question is, do you think maybe this is the right time to really have this particular bill? Are we as a country prepared to do away and have, you know, this particular position fully, you know, going through the ballot as opposed to affirmative action? Do you think also women maybe will be shortchanged? Sometimes we've even had some of you really crying foul that, yeah, you don't really have their wherewithal as well. Let's just hear from Jeremiah Kioni briefly.
I don't know. This debate was there during 10th Parliament. I sat through many meetings, seminars, workshops on, and all these proposals kept coming from different quarters. And it's a good debate as to whether the country is ready for this kind of changes. One has to continue wondering. What I know is that, and this, I think this is where we need to move some of this debate needs to, as it takes place.
Yes.
There's one thing that we need to get Kenyans on board. The question that comes to my mind, if, for example, today we were to ask Kenyans, do we restructure the position of the women rep as to how they come on board, or do we scrap it? My fear is that they will say, scrap it. We must first of all win the confidence of Kenyans as to why we need to retain the position of the women rep, and then come up with proposals on how to do it. And I'm been going through this. I haven't seen the bill, and I know I'll have an opportunity to engage with it and, of course, understand all the proposals. There is a requirement in the Constitution when we put it in at Naivasha. I must say that we put it there because it was impossible to crack it at Naivasha, and it was put in a manner that it is going to be very, very difficult to crack it or even to achieve it. I see this debate coming in the 13th, 14th, and 15th Parliament. I don't see us, but it is always good to continue trying. We can't stop trying. The question that will come is, these two constituencies that you want reserved, what do you do with the men who wanted to vie for them?
They'll still run.
Those are the kind of debates. And if they are running, is there any preferential treatment that is given to the women over men? And this debate will become more and more, and I can tell you we need to engage in them. And I spent 3-4 years on all these proposals, including what you have talked about, the green things and the rest. I tell you, I am ready to just listen.
All right, let's hear from Honorable Gishu.
Well, I think one thing is very clear, that Kenyans, all Kenyans, men and women, have very positive support for women representation and women in leadership. And in fact, we should not even be delaying in congratulating the first woman general. As that tells you already where we are heading. Where we are heading in this country is that we're getting a very good support for women. But secondly, and I think that women who are criticizing Cholet, for example, they have their chance in Parliament to come and debate this thing, but more particularly, yes, exactly, come up with proposals, because nobody has a monopoly on these proposals. And we just want to say that we, on the other hand, I know that it's a constitutional position, it's in our constitution that this traditional position of women rep will one day fade away. So it should help us to think about how do we then fill the void and even make it better, so that it's not just one woman representing a whole country, make it better, and so on. On the other hand, we have to balance this with the Wananchi also saying there are too many legislators, and so we must also balance all these things together and come up with a way in which we share the minimum of 1/3, so that we have the minimum of 1/3, which is a constitutional right again. So I do hope that at the risk of debating something that's not yet been presented before the House, we should be asking ourselves, in this day and age when women actually have attained all the qualifications that are needed, should we still be keeping them back, or should we be allowing them, or working with them to bring about the change that's required? The 2/3, 1/3 gender rule must be fought. Now, when it comes to the Duale bill and the progressive suggestion, it's good, at least everybody agrees that we are going there. How we go there is something to be negotiated all the way. So I think that we should have a lot of negotiations. And I hope, Dibal, that women caucuses all over the country will begin to think of at least adding value rather than removing from what has already been put on the table.
So do you see it seeing the light of day, as he says, or he sees it also being debated in the 14th and the 15th Parliament as well? So do you think you're actually batting your head on the wall?
One thing, I don't believe that success comes at once, or that Rome was built in one day. It takes many, many years. And I must commend people like Honorable Kioni. I know that he's been with he's called an honorary woman in Parliament by the women, because he's been very supportive of our cause and came with us to the UN conference.
Honorary woman.
Yes, and he was very, very useful to us when we went to the conference on the status of women in New York, and was very supportive, and we do appreciate him. But like I said, Dibal, you cannot say because people tried, they failed. If our forefathers had given up on making cars, or given up on fighting for independence, we wouldn't be where we are today.
True.
If women who have come before me hadn't kept on going, you know, people like Phoebe Asio, people like Julia Ujambo, had they not been there, I don't think, people like Chelagat Mutai from, you know, from my end of the world, if she hadn't fought, I wouldn't be enjoying what I'm enjoying today. Zipporah Kitony and so on. So I believe that it's also my chance to do a bit of what I can. and but I carry it with a positive mind. And also, it's giving us an opportunity to be able to discuss, and I think, Honorable Kioni, we don't have to worry what we'll do with the men who are running for these seats. If 2 constituencies are merged, it doesn't mean that you give up the single constituency. It will become 3 constituencies. So 2 single constituencies plus an added constituency defined just reserved for women. Yes, so it's an addition to it, and therefore there's no risk to that. But also, if we look at, and remember we said the 2 bills are asking for the same thing, which means the government is committed to ensure that they meet the 2/3 principle, and that I'm very happy about. But all I'm saying is that let's have a look at how we can change the formula to improve it. Because remember what happens now. Nominated senators, yeah, the women nominated senators, because they can only be one head of delegation in Senate, they have no voting power. What's the point of nominating women? They become senators and they cannot vote. Then it means they cannot weigh in on issues dealing with gender and people with marginalized persons, which means also that if they're not able to weigh in on those county decisions, then it means that they don't have an influence, and therefore, by the time the period within which the 20 years or so on is over, society will not have felt women, and therefore they'll still be where we are today, where they are more reluctant, they're reluctant to elect women leaders because they think they don't make an impact. So for me, I believe that we agree that we add more women, except that if we could do it through an election, it would be so much better, because also an affirmative action program is not permanent, and that's why in my proposal it runs for a 10-year period, and we are saying once a woman has gone through a campaign, once she's able to vote when she's in Senate, once she's able to weigh in on issues dealing with her county, believe me, in 10 years' time, she will be able to compete equally with any man at the election level.
What was the anticipation of the Constitution when we really had this particular seat? Because I've had other women rep, maybe misleading the public that after 10 years we're supposed to scrap this particular seat. Is that true? No.
You see, all affirmative action programs have a watershed period, sunset clause or a watershed period. Yes.
So what is a watershed period?
On this one, I think it's 20 years.
Yes.
When the draft left Naivasha, we had the sunset cross.
That's where the trouble started.
The sunset cross was 2022.
2022.
When it was coming to Parliament, somebody had managed to scrap it, did erase that particular provision. As it is now, there is no sunset cross.
Somebody managed to scrap it?
Yeah.
You see,
from the Constitution?
Like
that is
those
criminal.
Are some of the
how did it, who is this somebody?
Some of the things.
Let's just get a clarity from there.
These are some of the things that will go down in some books. But when we left Naivasha, we had clearly said that this will come to an end on 2022. And you remember the president, when he went to Mombasa one day, he actually pronounced himself on that particular clause, or that particular article, only for him to be told, by the way, it never saw the light of day. How it was removed, I think it was removed by the committee of experts or such. So there is no sunset clause as it is now. This is a position that will remain with us until we are able to put an amendment like what is being proposed by either Duare or Mheshimiwa Sholei.
So either way,
even as they come in, let me just say this, what I think about this is that we certainly need to move this to another level. It's very important for the country. You are better off with everybody on board than leaving others behind. We will need to hammer something that is agreeable to some people, and then look for an opportune time in the political happening of the country and allow it in. A free debate. There are many people who want women on board, but they do not want amendments and blah. So I am always looking for an opportune time when you can actually just bring in an amendment that fights its way in the Constitution with a debate, but without too much debate. That's not fair, but that's one of the ways I see it happening.
Yeah, can we hear from Dr. Zani, then we come to Gladys?
Yeah, thank you. The sunset clause could have been removed at that point when it left Naivasha, but it's part of the amendments, as Mheshimiwa has said, to return it as part of the Duale bill. And the sunset clause just means that after 20 years, this affirmative action should be in place. So whatever way, if it's progressive, for example, after the 20 years, one way or another, it should actually be in place. And therefore, people are moving forward when they have an established mechanism in place for how the system in the houses should be. But I think also it's very important to note, like, for example, this whole issue about the Senate and the voting for the Senate. Because I think in one of the other proposals that we're looking at in the 11th Parliament, somebody actually proposed a woman and man senator for each of the counties. But then the problem of the Senate and the problem of voting is a gender question to some extent, because most of the nominated are women, and I hope in the next 20 years it will have flipped over. Probably it will flip over even earlier. but it becomes a county vote. So even if there's a man and a woman per county, you can't have half a vote. And that is the complication. Now, the women who are there now, we have elected senators. We have Senator Fatma Dubulo, Senator Kamara, and Senator Susan Kihika. They're women, but they vote because you're voting for the county. Then the other thing is that the delegation vote is a consultative vote. It's meant to be a consultative vote. And if it is not a consultative vote, in the articles, actually somebody can stand up and say, I'm a member of this delegation and I haven't been consulted, because it's meant to be a consultation. And then now the elected member, who is the head of that delegation then, is the one who actually does the voting. Because at the end of the day, your denominator is 47. So you cannot have more than 47 counties. You cannot have one county have more than 2 votes, for example.
So either way, if even now you were not actually fronting this particular bill, it was the desire of the Constitution that there should be that sunset clause, and then it was really scrapped. So there is a sort of misunderstanding with the women that you want to scrap this whole set altogether. But it was also desirous from the beginning, from the the COC, the COE, I should say, from the beginning. But somebody maliciously expunged that. I can see Honorable Pogisho standing at the list to say something.
I hadn't finished. I'll just wrap it up and saying that at the end of the day, I think some sort of consensus, because I think that was what in the 11th Parliament the feeling was, that we need to be able to present one voice, even in how this happens. It's difficult to present one voice when you're many people in the first place, because everybody's coming up with an idea. But I think some sort of, again, going back to the caucuses and finding a modality, and having a way to agree on that modality and then pushing that one modality might help in this situation.
Just as you heard to Pogisho, I think it's important to allow the suggestions that are coming. Women should not fight them, for the reason that at a given point, if we don't improve on the state the way it is now, people will just come and say, scrap it. Let's put, because that sunset clause in people's minds is there. So it's only fair that we allow these kind of proposals to find their way and we improve on them, instead of just criticizing. Sitting idle is not useful. And I see many of them just happy that they're in Parliament and not thinking about how else they can improve so that other women find themselves on board. The danger is that once some women find themselves in positions, they no longer think of what was it that, what was the intention of this position. It was to help the women agenda. It was to help women going forward to ensure that they have a good play in the running of this country. And they must seize the opportunity, because I think the window is closing. The window is closing. Let's hear from Pogisho, then we'll come to you to close on it. Gladys, shall I? Thank you,
everybody. The window, we call it for amending our constitution, is coming around. The time that we can actually look at our constitution. And what is more important in the amendments than this particular issue? This is one of the biggest questions today that we must look at, apart from the others that will be coming. And so it is very important that we take a look at this, and I'm glad that somebody is at least is bringing us back to that question. Let's look at the issue of the 2/3 rule. Let's look at the women in leadership, and that becomes a good thing to debate. I like to agree with the proposals. The nominations for women smack of tokenism. And the women will never lead this country through those tokenism. Just imagine how nominations are made. On the basis of what? Nominations are made on the basis of activity in the party, isn't it? It's not even attached to a particular county. It's just how active you are in the party, what you have contributed in the party, and you're nominated. But you don't vote, like in the Senate. You don't really vote. You don't take a vote. And so if you know that, then you know you really want to put women firmly in leadership positions through election. But let's agree on the system. The thing about nominations, which I wanted to say also, is that there's no guarantee that a woman who comes this time will come the next time. So the women keep being replaced at very high rate, so that they don't even remain there to grow into the leadership of a place.
Or even to grow an idea.
Or, yeah, or even to follow through an idea which they're proposing. And so people, or women should look at this positively rather than thinking it is negative. It's a threat to their position.
Right, Gladys.
I think like I said, when women look at it, they will begin to support it, because first of all, the women representative seats, if we look at the last parliament, out of 47, only 10 came back, which means it tells you that it's very difficult for them to work on the ground. Why? The CDF, Honorable Kioni gets 100 million shillings to run a constituency. A woman representative gets 24 million to run an entire county, 6 in my case. So you can see that it is so difficult for women representatives in the position as designed to make an impact, which means we are not able to convince society that women are ready for leadership. Affirmative action is supposed to be a process by which women are having an opportunity or are being favored for a short period of time in order to showcase and show society that they are capable of leadership. So we must make sure that they are able to work. You have, my governor has 5 billion or plus shillings and a ward representative at every level, an MC at every ward. I have to deal with only 6 members of staff and be able to run an entire country. How do you expect me to make a difference and then say that you have promoted women to come into leadership? So if we redesign this in such a way that the women representatives have a smaller ground to cover, then they are able to make impact and therefore capable of competing equally. But also, I think let's move the debate away from saying it's a women's issue. This is not a women's issue. This is a human rights issue. It's a right to equality. So let's forget it as a women's issue. It's a human rights issue. A human rights issue is a right that must be enjoyed immediately and not progressively. And remember, and it does not matter what kind of debate people bring in relating to it, remember that having 15 commissions, independent commissions, is a constitutional requirement. Did we say that we are going to implement that progressively? No, it was immediate. And like Honorable Kioni says, I think the problem happened and I think all my readings and research has shown that there was a slight problem. Somebody dropped the ball in Naivasha. And so the Constitution and the intention of Kenyans across the country, I think it was a non-contentious issue to have more women on board during the constitution-making process. It was not one of the issues that people disagreed on. And they agreed that, yes, we need more women on board. It was provided for in the Constitution. The problem is they failed to write the specifics. That was the error. And now we have this nightmare that we have to come back and try and find this formula. I know that I have been part of that debate even before I came into politics, long before I knew that I would join politics, because I've been very senior in the public service. And I was always very few, I would go to a boardroom and I was the only woman. So it's something that has bothered me throughout. So I know that when I was elected, I swore that I would ensure to create more space for women to come into leadership. And not just for me, because I was lucky. I want to be sure that my daughter and Kioni's daughter and Pogisho's daughter will be able to get into a position of leadership. I'm sure the honorable members here don't want to educate their daughters and then that they can never make it in leadership. I don't think any father wants that for their daughter. So this is what I'm fighting for. This is what I believe in. And if it's the last thing I do while being in parliament, I will be able to tell myself I achieved something. For me, that is so important. It's not about being in parliament or sitting in parliament. I think for me, the achievement wasn't getting elected. The achievement is if we can ensure that many of our girls get in. And lastly, Dibal, affirmative action programs world over, and even as designed, are supposed to be a temporary measure. You're supposed to give a softer landing ground, some preference to a certain group of people until such time that they have equalized, isn't it, with the others. So even the promotion of the girl child at the moment is not a permanent feature. It is supposed to be for a period until we feel the girls are at par with the boy child. When we do find that the boy child is endangered, which I'm hearing a lot of debate about, there will be again affirmative action programs to promote the boy child. And then, so our society or a democracy must constantly work towards achieving equalization at all levels.
Thank you.
At the moment, we realize that people living with disabilities are greatly disadvantaged in our society, and that's why our constitution provides for it. We have legislation to provide for it. The government is putting in big programs to ensure that they are brought at par with other people living who are not physically challenged or have challenges. So yes, it's a human rights issue, it's not a women's rights issue.
Thank you. All right, even as we're winding up, don't you think maybe that the spirit that we had with the progressive realization of this particular amendment bill by Ed and Duale was maybe to help the women just realize it's progressively? Because if we actually had, just an immediate act on it that yes, we should do away with it, then the women will suffer, because
the Constitution
the
Constitution does not envisage or does not provide, or anywhere in the world, that a civil and political right is achieved progressively. That one is immediate. Socio-economic rights, right to housing, right to health, and so on, those are progressive, can be achieved progressively. But political rights are achieved immediately. For example, your right to vote. Suppose I tell you, let's do it progressively. Let's start with the 18-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 30-year-olds this year. Then after 5 years, we give a chance to the 20-year-olds. And then after some years, again, we give a chance now to the 18-year-olds. It is an immediate realization.
Right. Let's get closing statements from also Dr. Zani, briefly.
Yeah, I think that is very clear. And the progressive, as it was envisaged by Ndwale, was, I think, had to do with the implication of the numbers and everybody sort of coming on board at the same time. But I think that was argued upon, and I think the progressive, as it was put in the 11th Parliament, never saw the light of the day. It sort of, died off, because again, the same support that was given for the Ndwale bill, as I saw it last after the several amendments, was finally that this percentage, so basically after an election, a percentage or the numbers will be added, and then these specific women will come on board immediately, and that will be put into place. And just to emphasize again, when we're talking about the implementation of men and women leadership, should be looked at the same phase. Women add value into leadership, men add value into leadership. When it comes to the assessment of what women do, it has to be put within the light of the surroundings and everything else that comes with it. For example, we know, even as Honorable Shelley said, that about 10 of the women only came back. We know that the affirmative fund that was put, the GAF fund that was put in place towards the end of the year. And many of the people on the ground were asking, what are these women doing? What are they meant to do? You see, progressively in the 12th Parliament, it's easier for this set of women who are going to starting and jump-starting. And just to finish up and say that even in managerial circles now, there are certain companies that ensure there's equality, because they've found out that when there's equality, productivity is higher. When the presence of women is there, productivity also goes high.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's hear from Honorable.
I think it is important to
your closing statements.
Yes, one is that it is important to have these proposed constitutional amendments, and they need to be there in numbers. I see the Duale one being affected by the Jubilee politics. By the time it matures, you never know whether we will be talking in one voice. If that happens, no bill, no constitutional amendment will take place. So it's important to have a series of them, just in case one hits Parliament when the political climate is light. These things will never be, they'll never pass, not because we all agree that there is a need to bring women on board. But the widow, this is why I'm saying we need to look for opportunity to sneak it in. And the kind of politics that are going on, I see that affecting some of these major things that we need to do in Parliament. But I think it's also important to, as we close, to say that we continue encouraging the DPP to do what he's doing. We need even a stronger purge on corruption. We must encourage him. He's doing well for the Kenyan. He has the support. And finally, discourage the governors from talking of things that are not available in the Constitution. Talking of immunity is really, they must look for ways of helping Kenyans in their counties. Stop holding meetings to talk about immunity for governors. Is
right. Honorable Pogisho, finally, your closing
statement. Thank you, Deval, and I hope that very soon you'll be showing us, as President Obama lands in Kogelo, the excitement of a lot of people. And his participation in development in Kenya, I think that's a very good sign that we have confidence in America's confidence in our country. But the other thing that I just want to conclude is that as Parliament, we have to learn from everybody. We get contribution, even motions and bills. We get contributions from the fraternity in the professions, in this country. And I think I'll urge all the professionals, the lawyers, the engineers, everybody, to start weighing in on these matters as well as the Wananchi and give proposals. Let's have them also participate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, thank you, Gladys Bostrele.